Welcome back. We now go to Jim Wallace, who provides us each week with his Christian perspective of what's happening in the various Australian parliaments. Hello again, Jim.
Thanks again, David.
An ACT election is coming up on October 18. Is this likely to be as close as the recent West Australian and Northern Territory elections?
Well, we think it will be. We usually have quite close elections in the ACT, but it's as much a function of our particular electoral system, which is a Hare-Clark system. I won't go into the complications of that because it is quite complicated, but it tends to mean that you're more likely to get a minority government. It tends to empower some of the minor parties in the electoral system, and so we tend to have close elections, and we are, so the punters are saying, very likely to have a minority government with either Labor or Liberal in power. Of course, having had such big swings in the Northern Territory, over 9%, in West Australia, over 6%, then there's quite a chance that the Liberal Party will, in fact, cause an upset here and throw Mr Stanhope out.
And just how much does the ACT arena affect the rest of Australia?
Well, I think, unfortunately, people probably don't realise just how much, David, because we have a very small legislature of 17 people. It doesn't have an upper house, so there's no House of Review. So if you get somebody in power, and particularly has a majority where they're not subject to much contestability on what they're putting forward, then, in fact, you can get very libertarian agendas passed very quickly because there's no review again in the upper house. Now, we've seen this in recent years. We've seen this with Mr Stanhope, who is avowedly libertarian. He's passed a lot of legislation which public consultation has shown has not been popular out in the electorate. It has been very concerning to Christians in some areas, particularly in the areas of homosexual adoption, in the area of civil unions, which of course we've seen both the Howard government and the Labor government overturn. But yes, it is a legislature that needs to be looked upon, both for its peculiar nature in the makeup of the electorate, but also in the fact that it doesn't have a House of Review and it's just got a very small number of people making these decisions.
Are there benefits for Christians in having closer electoral contests in the states and territories?
Without doubt, David. I think one of our great concerns over the last few years, quite a few years, has been the imbalance in state legislatures. And what it's meant is that the sitting governments have become quite arrogant. They have not responded to the requirements or the concerns of various constituencies, including the Christian constituency, and as a result of that we've got again some very libertarian legislation. So if we have closer elections, then of course they've got to be more responsive to all constituencies and particularly to the bigger ones. We've already seen this in West Australia, where now we have a much closer situation between Labor and Liberal, and we've had the Labor opposition leader there already say that he realises he has to get or take Labor closer to the church and to start listening to some of his concerns.
Thanks as always, Jim.
Thank you, David.
Our reporter Jim Wallace in Canberra.